I think on the themes of the event, consumer trust, we share a general ideological orientation and a normative outlook, but we come at this from very different industries, from very different sectors, and we have very different stories to tell. And so we, by coming together and talking through these issues and drilling down into specific aspects of them, how the evolution of regulation around the world plays a factor, how the evolution of technology factors in, we learn from each other about how we're doing. We can better self-evaluate our own businesses, our own policies, and our own decisions based on our interactions with others and based on learning from others in other sectors. I think that at an event like this, on the theme of consumer trust, we share a normative bent, an ideological orientation. We all believe in the importance of consumer trust as a positive value add and a distinguishing characteristic, as well as a way to ensure that our industries and our sectors remain healthy and vital over time. But I think we can learn from each other because we come from different backgrounds and perspectives, because we have different stories to tell. We can use that information to evaluate our own progress, our own business practices and policies, and to improve and to better sync how we can work together to achieve our shared goals and ends. I think there were two things today that stood out for me. I'm comparing it a bit to my last experience at a MEF summit, which was last October in London. And one thing that stood out more to me was the increasing attention that this group of businesses is placing on regulation and regulatory evolution. Both the Federal Trade Commission's work with recent high-profile fines, as well as the adoption of the GDPR in Europe. This is clearly on everyone's radar screen. It's a major influence in how businesses, both MEF members and our sort of shared community of consumer trust investors and valuers, but our industries as a whole, this is a factor. It's unclear yet how exactly this will play out, but it's a high-profile piece of this puzzle, and it's a thing that, although on my radar screen for other reasons, hasn't been as closely tied to the sort of market-driven consumer trust dynamic. So now in my head, those are tied a little more closely together. The second thing is just some of the technology evolutions were very much on my radar screen. Certainly health and Internet of Things are high on my radar screen for this. But artificial intelligence came up in one of the conversations. I found that fascinating. And I hadn't really thought about the richness of the ways in which these two worlds intersected. So although it's not part of what I do or what Mozilla does, it's nevertheless in sort of my role in thinking about the evolving policy and industry ecosystems. It's something of interest and something new. I think consumer trust and the work that we're doing together will continue to stay relevant, and industry will need to continue to stay engaged because the amount of data about us is growing and the ways in which it is being used are growing. And that's not inherently a bad thing. There's a lot of value that gets delivered, but it does make some of the core challenges that we face of being thoughtful about our practices and of being transparent to users, it makes those harder. And all of this is against the backdrop of one of the earliest conversations today, where someone very clearly said, regulation isn't going to solve all of these problems. Users are not going to, on their own, solve all of these problems. So at the end of the day, to get back to a place where thoughtfulness and transparency are at the center and where trust is healthy and vital, the solution space has to come in large part from us, from industry.